The sly grin of the pale face shone in the moonlight. The man held out his thumb on the side of the road, a thumb that seemed unnaturally long and pointed. His skin looked as white as a sheet of paper, and his grin spread from ear to ear. His eyes watched me passing like two dark oil spots shining under the street lamp. I did not pull over. I didn't even talk to the man. But it would happen again. Everything had gone strange. That day back in 2019 had seemed normal enough. I had gone to work, doing a night shift at the warehouse. They paid me decent, $24 an hour, so commuting 30 minutes each way didn't bother me. I certainly had no higher paying warehouse jobs in my town, a town where huge stretches of forest took over most of the land. At 2:25 a.m., I left work, driving home the same country roads I had used thousands of times before. It was a straight shot to town, a winding paved road that passed by countless corn and tobacco fields. The smell of manure permeating the air and wafting in through the vents. I had burned the air freshener slightly, as I always did, releasing a nice vanilla smell inside the car that sent the reeking odor of old fertilizer away. But by 2:50 a.m., I realized something seemed off. First, I should have reached houses by now. But the road just kept going forwards. Totally dark. The fields stretching off to the horizon in every direction. Eventually, I realized I was going in a circle. I saw the same massive dead tree on the right, its bare branches reaching up into the cloudless sky. I considered turning around and trying to go back the way I came, but I knew I had to be on the right road. So, I kept going forwards. And after a few minutes, I saw the hitchhiker for the first time. His skin looked totally white and bloodless, thin and papery as it stretched across his strangely inhuman face. His grin seemed to stretch from ear to ear, and I saw his long, twisted thumb extended when I passed. Like hell, I'm picking him up. I said to myself, turning on the radio. I couldn't help but to look behind me a few times, my heart seeming to beat too fast in my chest when I did. And I saw him staring in my direction, still smiling broadly. His limbs seemed thin and twisted. Too long. The joints bending in ways and areas that a human limb shouldn't normally go. He wore a plain khaki shirt and khaki pants. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the uniform for jails and prisons in the area. At least for lower security inmates who didn't require the bright red or orange jumpsuits of potential escapees or those suspected or convicted of extreme crimes. The streetlights flickered as I looked back, strobing quickly, casting the silhouette of the man in an eerie light. With every strobe, I saw his face transforming, the smile fading into a scowl of pure hatred and insanity. I drove faster, trying to get away. 5 minutes later, I saw him again, in front of my car. The road went straight, but somehow he had gotten ahead of me again. The lights flickered faster all around the road, and his smile had returned, though looking even more menacing than before. His teeth looked too sharp, and there seemed to be far too many of them in that inhumanly wide mouth. As I drove slowly past him, my heart hammering in my chest, the whole world went dark, and I slammed on my brakes. The lights on my car had just cut out, as well as the streetlights, and the ambient light from the stars and the moon was non-existent under the thick, black clouds covering the sky to the horizon. I heard light footsteps against the pavement of the road. My engine still ran, but even inside the car, the lights had gone out. The radio turned off, and the gauges stopped working. Something felt wrong inside the car, and not just in the mechanical sense. There was a feeling of dread. As the street lights and gauges and radio all came back on at the same time, I saw the man in my passenger seat. That eerie grin still spread across his face. The door had never opened or shut as far as I knew or heard. It seemed like he had just teleported into the car from his position near the passenger door. But perhaps that was simply a trick of my mind in the darkness. Perhaps.
Thank you for helping me. You don't know how many people just drive past and refuse to help their fellow human beings in a time of trouble.
What do you want? I wished I had a knife, or a can of mace, or something that would give me an edge. I felt naked.
I just need a ride to the next exit, my friend.
This isn't a highway. There are no exits. It's just a random country road, and I'm not even sure I know where I am. I don't know how that's possible, seeing as I take this way home every day, but...
There are no exits when we need them in life. And I need one now. Go forwards. And when you see the exit to Rusty Township, take it. I'll let you go if you do. I'll let you live. But otherwise...
He turned to me, grinning again. Looking at his sly, inhuman face, hearing his words. A fragment of an old poem by Robert Browning I first heard in college came to me. My first thought was he lied in every word. That hoary cripple with malicious eyes, askance to watch the working of his lie, on mine and mouth scarce able to afford, suppression of the glee that pursued and scored, its edge at one more victim gained thereby. What else should he be set for with his staff? What save to waylay with his lies and snare all travelers who might find him posted there, and ask the road? I guessed what skull-like laugh would break, what crutch gin write my epitaph, for pastime in the dusty thoroughfare. Looking into those eyes, I felt like this poem had been written about this exact man. I drove forwards, and the man reached into his pocket. I tensed, expecting a knife or a gun, but he brought out a little pouch. "What's that?" I asked nervously, looking over. To my surprise, an exit sign had shown up a few 100 feet ahead. The pale man threw the pouch from hand to hand, his twisted, inhumanly long fingers snatching it out of the air like a toad snatching a fly.
"Just a few precious things I like to keep on me. Where we're going, we will need these. By the way, what is your name? If we are going to be traveling companions, we should introduce ourselves. That is, after all, the basic custom in all worlds."
Up ahead, I could make out the sign now. To Rusty Township, 5 miles.
Ah, good old Rusty. It is a spectacular place. You will never see another one like it, I guarantee you. By the way, my name is Forrest. I'm quite a big deal where I come from, you see. You'll be happy you stopped and helped me. I guarantee that.
He laughed, a shrill gurgling sound that made my blood run cold.
Isn't that right, Jason?
I nodded. I wasn't surprised in the least that he knew my name already. Clearly, he had been waiting for me and me alone. I didn't know why, but I had a feeling I would find out soon. I turned on my blinker as we approached the exit, even though I hadn't seen another car or human being on the road in over an hour and a half. The woods rapidly receded into broken, bombed-out houses and buildings. The darkness around us jumped and danced as the headlights illuminated rusting tanks with the tops blown off, and burnt cars whose blackened skeletons stood on the side of the road like sentries. Their smashed and shattered safety glass scattered across the road. What is this place?
Just keep driving.
At certain points, the road narrowed so much from the wreckage that I had to slow down to a few miles an hour, trying to weave in and out of the cataclysmic damage that had destroyed this city. Off in the distance, I saw the silhouettes of skyscrapers, black against a dark gray, cloudy sky. No lights shone in the buildings. Bodies hung from the dead lightless lampposts as we neared the downtown. Soon, the entire main street turned into a pile of wreckage, and my car could go no further on that road. The remains of what looked like a fighter jet shone under my headlights. Pieces scattered and twisted and blackened from flames across every part of the road. The corpse of the plane mixed with the various burnt-out cars and destroyed tanks to create a nearly impenetrable barricade. Unless one was on foot and could climb over the wreckage. Forrest pointed to a side street, grinning. I swung the car left, and the headlights illuminated a horror I had never imagined. The first living being I had seen in this apocalyptic wasteland. I thought I saw a little boy for a moment, but it seemed all wrong. His skin shone a bright red, like the color of inflammation, and he spider-walked on all fours backwards, his head upside down, his hands twisted in front of him as his chest bent and heaved. I had never seen anything like it, except maybe in movies like The Exorcist. And the speed with which he went forward in that twisted posture sent waves of dread running through my body. His eyes focused on the headlights of the car, and he hissed so loudly that I could hear it through the closed windows. He moved forward, twisting and writhing, his joints seeming to bend in ways that no human limb could. His head so hyperextended that it looked like his neck should have snapped. But it was the eyes reflecting the light of the headlamps, that really disturbed me. They looked to be covered in a bloody film, a thick pink membrane that dribbled strange fluids down his face. Underneath that cataract, I could almost see the vague suggestion of eyes, but it was like staring down a well, unable to make out the bottom except by silhouettes or glimpses. Jumping up on all fours, he flew through the air and landed fast on my windshield. I began to scream. "For us, do something!" I yelled. But his bloodless, inhuman face seemed nonplussed. I saw, in the photographic awareness of a massive adrenaline spike, he still had his little pouch in his hand. Sighing, he opened it up, untying the drawstrings. I heard little clicking sounds coming from inside. Looking back up, I saw the boy's face almost pressed against the windshield, staring directly at me. The eyes, only a foot away through the thin glass, regarded me with abject hatred and hunger. He gnashed his teeth, snapping his little jaw open and closed. Then I saw his little red hand lift up, and he started smashing at the windshield. With no apparent pain, his fist collided with the glass in front of my face. A circular dent appeared, the loud thud making me jump so high I nearly hit my head on the top of the car. Cracks spiderwebbed out. He raised his little hand again, punching hard, furious, spitting and hissing. Coming back down, I heard the window give way when he hit the same exact spot again. As if in slow motion, I saw the web of cracks lengthen and thicken when the safety glass shattered, sending the debris flying all over me, Forrest, and the inside of the car. Forrest no longer smiled. His scowl made him look totally demented. The pouch had opened, and from it, he drew a pebble, no larger than a pencil eraser. The pebble seemed to radiate colors and light, almost like opal. But the light coming from this stone seemed to come from within it. The rainbows of colors shimmered within the stone, constantly swirling and combining. The boy began to reach into the car, and I started shrieking. His fingers looked broken and twisted, and I saw his nails had turned black with crusted blood and dirt shoved deep underneath them. The smell of his body from so close made me want to gag. The odor felt like it had a physical presence in the car. A thick, rotting, cheesy smell that emanated from the boy's strange flesh. Forrest grabbed the hand just as it neared my throat. The bleached hand of Forrest snatched it in a blur, moving faster than humanly possible. And with the terrible crack, I heard the bones snap as he twisted the hand backwards until it nearly touched the boy's arm. The bones splintered and snapped through the skin, sending dark drops of crimson blood flying in every direction. After a moment of utter silence, the boy let out a wail that shook the car. I covered my ears as the rest of the glass in my car shattered under the deafening cacophony.
God, shut him up!
I tried to scream to Forrest, but I couldn't even hear my own words. If it went on much longer, I felt certain my eardrums would explode. I clamped down tighter around my ears, but at that moment, Forrest pulled the boy by his broken arm towards him and raised the colorful stone to the boy's face. With his other hand, he grabbed the boy's throat and choked, closing off his windpipe. My ears rang in the sudden silence.
My boy, my boy,
Forrest said in a fatherly tone, smiling.
This is the wrong car for you to attack.
He squeezed tighter, and the boy's already crimson face went an even darker hue. He tried to claw and bite at Forrest, but the boy rapidly lost strength. As the boy died, Forrest raised the strange, iridescent pebble to the boy's mouth. I saw something go from the boy into the pebble, but I'm not sure what. It looked like streaming shadows, totally black and impenetrable. It ran in a current, the black torrents swirling and twisting as the pebble absorbed all of it. The boy seemed to lose substance, his skin sucking in on his body, his flesh evaporating before my eyes. By the end, he looked like just a desiccated skeleton with dried, papery skin. Forrest threw him forward easily, the light body arcing through the air and falling on top of a blackened motorcycle laying on its side in the middle of the street. I looked over and saw with both wonder and horror that the pebble had changed. Its formerly opalescent quality had gone, and now torrents of black and dark crimson swarmed in the stone, still twisting and moving constantly, but without the beautiful, iridescent light it had earlier shown. What What is this place? I asked the only thing I could think of. I didn't expect Forrest to answer me truthfully. I knew he would probably kill me as soon as we got to wherever we were going. But he surprised me and told me a story that I would later confirm to be true.
I told you, this is Rusty Township. In the country of Victoriate. It's a rather long story, I'm sorry to say, and I don't have the time to tell you all of it. I can give you, what do you call it in your world? The Cliff Notes version.
Okay. He looked down at the pebble still in his hand, and with a dexterous flip of his fingers, threw it in the air and watched it land perfectly in the little open pouch in his other hand. He tied the knot and put it back in his pocket, turning to me and grinning.
It is a rather funny story. I mean, at least to me. A few billion dead, and the rest refugees in a dying, unrecognizable world. I guess it all started with a man called General Matheson. He took power in Victoriate in a coup from the democratically elected government during a period of hyperinflation and crippling unemployment. When the people rioted and the homeless covered every street. The citizens of Victoriate supported him, by and large because the conditions seemed so terrible that they thought it couldn't possibly get any worse. Ironic in a way, isn't it? So General Matheson started fixing the economy by starting wars. A wartime economy required countless tanks, soldiers, planes, missiles, and everything else, which caused new jobs to appear. He bombed the Kingdom of China, stating that they had taken legitimate islands in the South China Sea from Victoriate's allies in the region. Meanwhile, back at home, he also began recruiting men for the running of camps and the rounding up and murder of all undesirables. He began with drug addicts and alcoholics, homeless people, the insane, criminals, and whoever else seemed unfit for his great new country. They called themselves the Iron Servants. They would drag people off the streets and take them away, never to be seen again. In reality, the Iron Servants would put them in a cell or transport bus and give them all water to drink. Water laced with high doses of carfentanil and etorphine, which are both tasteless and extremely lethal. Afterwards, they'd just burn the bodies in open-air pits. By this time, they had killed tens of millions of people. And the economy was absolutely roaring. Everyone was happy. Everyone had jobs. And all the problems seemed to have disappeared overnight. A true success. Right? A happy ending. Well, not exactly. It turns out the Kingdom of China had developed a strange new bomb. Not a nuclear one, but one that used antimatter as the explosive material. It had a far stronger yield than any hydrogen bomb ever developed, or so they predicted. But antimatter was so expensive and hard to produce that they had no trial runs. They took the first bomb and dropped it over Victoriate Center, near the city of Rusty Township, where we are now. The antimatter ignited when it hit the surface and was released from its containment. And there was an explosion. A massive crater that went deep into the ground. A black mushroom cloud went high into the clouds, and the ground shook. But when the smoke had cleared, it seemed the antimatter bomb hadn't had nearly as much yield as predicted. Most of the city still stood. But that crater had strange things within it, as the people soon found out. Very strange things indeed. They began to crawl and swarm out of the hole, as if a tunnel to another world had been opened. And perhaps it had.
There's no perhaps about it, I thought to myself, as I put the car in drive and went forwards into a dead city.